Looking back at how everything went down with Darnell, I still think people are way too dramatic about the whole thing. Like, everyone acts like I committed some horrible crime, when really, I was just trying to figure out who I was again after feeling invisible for so long. We met back in 2018 at this cookout his cousin was throwing. I was working at this logistics company doing scheduling. Nothing too exciting, and he was already established in HVAC work. Darnell was 29 then, and honestly, he seemed like exactly what I needed. Stable, reliable, owned his own truck, talked about buying a house. Not the most exciting guy in the world. But I was getting tired of dating these losers who couldn't even keep a job for 6 months. Here was someone who actually had his shit together. We dated for about a year and a half before he proposed in 2020. The whole thing was very him, practical, straightforward, no big romantic gesture or anything. Just, I think we should get married. Amanda, we work well together. Super romantic, right? But whatever. I said yes because it made sense. He was a good provider, and I figured I could do worse. After we got married, he bought this nice house in Henderson. The arrangement was pretty fair. He handled the mortgage since it was his credit that got us the place. And I covered utilities and groceries. I thought it worked out well, though he was always stressing about the mortgage payments and making sure we had enough saved for repairs and maintenance. The man was obsessed with having an emergency fund for every possible scenario. New water heater might go out. Better save for it. AC unit might need servicing. Better budget for it. It was exhausting sometimes. All that planning and preparing for problems that might never happen. The first couple years were fine, I guess. Darnell worked his regular schedule. Came home. We'd watch TV, go to bed, rinse and repeat. He was always tired from work. Always had some project he was working on around the house. Weekends were spent at Home Depot or in the garage, organizing his tools or checking on this or that. I kept thinking things would get more interesting once we settled in. But honestly, it just got more routine. That's when I started spending more time on my phone. At first it was just Instagram and Facebook. But then I discovered TikTok late last year, and holy shit. It was like this whole other world opened up. The content was actually entertaining, not just people posting pictures of their lunch or their kids. And the comments, people were actually funny and engaging. I found myself scrolling for hours, watching these creators who seemed so confident and free. I started posting some of my own content, just little videos of my outfits or me lip syncing to songs. Nothing crazy. But the response was incredible. Suddenly I had all these followers. People liking my videos, leaving comments about how pretty I looked, or asking where I got my clothes. It felt amazing to get that kind of attention again. Darnell barely looked up from his phone or the TV when I walked through the room. But here were hundreds of people actually noticing me. The comments started getting more personal. Guys sliding into my DMs telling me how gorgeous I was. Asking about my day. Wanting to know more about me. It was harmless flirting. But it felt so good to have men actually interested in talking to me. Darnell and I barely had real conversations anymore. Just logistics about bills and schedules, and whose turn it was to pick up groceries. I started putting more effort into how I looked, buying clothes that actually showed off my figure instead of the boring stuff I'd been wearing. When I'd dress up, Darnell might make some comment like, "Where are you going? Dressed like that." But it wasn't like he was complimenting me or anything. He just seemed suspicious, which was annoying as hell. A woman can't look nice for herself. The DMs kept getting more interesting. This one guy, Jared, was particularly sweet. He was around my age, had his own place, seemed successful. He'd ask about my day, remember things I told him, actually listen when I talked about feeling unappreciated at home. It was such a relief to have someone who wanted to hear what I had to say, instead of just grunting responses while staring at the TV. I started being more careful about my phone, keeping it on silent, making sure the screen wasn't visible when Darnell was around. Not because I was doing anything wrong, but because I knew he wouldn't understand. He was already getting weird about how much time I spent online, making little comments about me always being on my phone. Like, sorry for having interests outside of air conditioning, repair and lawn maintenance. The conversations with Jared and some of the other guys got more personal. They'd tell me how lucky Darnell was, how if they had a woman like me, they'd never take me for granted. It was everything I needed to hear. These men actually saw me as desirable, as someone worth pursuing and impressing. When's the last time Darnell tried to impress me? When's the last time he made me feel like he was lucky to have me? Some of the guys started offering to send me money, just because they wanted to. At first I thought it was weird, but then I realized, why shouldn't men who appreciate me want to show that appreciation? It wasn't like I was asking for it or doing anything inappropriate. They'd send $20 or $50 just because they liked talking to me. Honestly, it felt good to have my own money that I didn't have to discuss with Darnell or justify spending. The The late-night conversations became my favorite part of the day. After Darnell fell asleep, I'd tell him I needed to use the bathroom and spend an hour messaging with Jared or whoever else was online. These guys were actually awake and wanted to talk. Unlike my husband who was snoring by 10 p.m. every night, we'd talk about everything. Their jobs, their goals, what they were looking for in life. Real conversations about real things. Jared started asking for pictures. Nothing too crazy at first. Just regular photos of me looking cute. But then he offered to send more money for pictures that were a little more personal. And honestly, why not? It's not like Darnell was paying attention to how I looked anyway. At least someone wanted to see me, wanted to appreciate what he was ignoring. The money was getting pretty good too, sometimes 100 or more for a few photos. I opened a separate Cash App account to keep things simple. I started mocking Darnell a little in my messages, just venting about how boring and predictable he was. Jared would sympathize, tell me I deserved so much better than someone who took me for granted. He was right. Here I was, still young and attractive, stuck with someone who treated me like a roommate instead of a wife. These other men could see what Darnell was missing. The messaging became a regular thing. Multiple guys, all wanting my attention, all willing to show their appreciation financially. I wasn't meeting anyone in person or anything. It was just online fun. But it felt like I was finally living again instead of just existing in this boring routine Darnell had us stuck in. Things got a little close to the edge one night, when I was on the couch messaging Jared around 1 or 2 in the morning. Darnell got up to get water and saw me on my phone. He asked what I was doing up so late, and I just said I couldn't sleep and was scrolling through videos. He seemed suspicious but didn't push it. Still, it made me realize I needed to be more careful. The next morning, I decided to test the waters a little. We were having coffee, and I brought up the topic of open marriages. What do you think about open marriages? I asked, trying to sound casual and intellectual about it. I think couples who do them the right way actually get stronger. They're more honest about their needs. Darnell just stared at me like I suggested we burn the house down. What are you talking about? Amanda. Why would you even bring that up? I tried to explain that I'd been reading about how some couples find it liberating to be more open about attraction to other people, how it can actually improve communication and trust. But he was getting that stubborn look he gets when he doesn't want to consider new ideas. Are you saying you want to see other people? He asked, and his voice had that edge to it that meant he was getting pissed. Before I could answer, he just reached over and grabbed my phone right out of my hand. Give it back, Darnell. You're hurting my hand. I'll call the cops. You going to call the police because I took your phone? What are you hiding? I tried to get it back, but he was already opening my messages. I watched his face change as he scrolled through the DMs, saw the Cash App notifications, read the conversations with Jared and the others. The look he gave me was like I was some stranger he'd never seen before. What the hell is this? Amanda, you're selling pictures? You're talking shit about me to these guys. I tried to explain that it wasn't what it looked like, that it was just harmless conversation, and the money thing wasn't a big deal. But he wasn't listening. He just kept scrolling and reading, getting quieter and quieter, which was somehow worse than if he'd started yelling. Pack a bag, he finally said. I'm going to stay at my cousin's place. Just like that. No big fight. No screaming match. No chance for me to explain properly. He just started throwing clothes in a duffel bag like our whole marriage meant nothing to him. I kept trying to talk to him, to make him understand that this didn't have to be a huge deal, but it was like talking to a wall. Within 2 weeks, he'd filed for divorce. 2 effing weeks. Like our whole relationship was just something he could throw away because of some messages and a little harmless fun. He moved out completely. Wouldn't take my calls. Had his lawyer handle everything? It was the most dramatic overreaction I'd ever seen. The court hearing was a joke. I tried to explain to the judge that I went online because I didn't feel safe opening up to him in real life, that I felt small in our home, that he was emotionally unavailable and worked all the time. But somehow I was the bad guy because of the Cash App thing and the messages. They made it sound like I was running some kind of business instead of just accepting gifts from men who appreciated me. I didn't get spousal support, which was complete bullshit considering I'd put 3 years into trying to make our marriage work, while he was emotionally checked out. The whole process felt like I was being punished for trying to find happiness and connection that I wasn't getting at home. As soon as the divorce was finalized, he moved to Arizona, just packed up and left like he'd never lived here at all, blocked my number, blocked me on social media, told mutual friends he didn't want any contact. It was such an extreme reaction to what should have been something we could work through, like adults. I tried reaching out through friends, left voicemails from different numbers, explaining that I'd done a lot of reflecting and realized I was influenced by the wrong people. That TikTok culture. It brainwashed me into thinking I needed more excitement and validation than what we had. I told him I understood now that what we had was real and solid, and that I'd made a mistake getting caught up in online fantasy. But he never responded to any of it. Complete silence, like I never existed. I heard through mutual friends that he's seeing someone now, some nurse named Brittany, who's divorced with no kids. Apparently he's doing great, got a good job out there, bought a house, even started seeing a therapist to process the trauma of our marriage. Trauma? Like I was some kind of abusive monster instead of a wife who got a little attention online. Meanwhile, I'm stuck here living with roommates because I can't afford a place on my own. The TikTok thing didn't work out the way I thought it would. Turns out getting a few thousand followers doesn't actually translate into real money or opportunities. I tried getting into real estate for a while, but that didn't last either. Now I'm doing freelance work and trying to rebuild my life while he gets to start fresh in Arizona like nothing ever happened. It's been almost a year now, and I still think he could have handled the whole thing differently. We could have gone to counseling, worked through our communication problems, figured out how to meet each other's needs better. Instead, he chose the nuclear option and blew up everything we'd built together. All because his ego couldn't handle that other men found his wife attractive and interesting. I know I wasn't perfect, but relationships take work from both people. If he'd been more present, more attentive, more interested in connecting with me emotionally, maybe I wouldn't have needed to find that connection elsewhere. But instead of looking at his own role in our problems, he just decided I was the villain and walked away. Now he gets to play the victim to his new girlfriend and his therapist, talking about how his ex-wife betrayed him, while I'm the one dealing with the real consequences of a marriage that failed because we both stopped trying. The only difference is, I was honest about looking for something more while he just checked out completely and then acted shocked when I found what I was missing somewhere else. I still think about messaging him sometimes, trying one more time to explain that what we had was worth fighting for, but his complete silence has made it pretty clear that he's moved on and doesn't want to hear from me. So I guess that's it. 3 years of marriage thrown away because he couldn't handle his wife getting attention from other men and couldn't be bothered to give me the attention I needed at home. Maybe someday he'll realize that relationships are more complicated than just black and white, right and wrong. Maybe he'll understand that I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was just trying to feel alive again in a marriage that had become routine and boring, but probably not. He always was pretty rigid in his thinking, pretty quick to make judgments instead of trying to understand different perspectives. Either way, I'm moving forward, learning to be independent again, figuring out what I want for my future. It would have been nice if we could have figured it out together. But you can't force someone to fight for a relationship if they'd rather just walk away. That's on him, not me